Hello and welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Reese, and on this episode, the Introverted Nerd watches Season 3, Episode 7 of Saved by the Bell, Rent-A-Pop. Ooh, pop. I don't know why I did that. I've been doing that all day when I've, just randomly in my car, just popping all over the place. So it is Super Bowl Sunday. Unfortunately, I live in Philadelphia, so I have to get this done early. It's like I'm eating breakfast. Oh, food recommendation. Well, I don't know, smoothie, food, or drink. Doesn't matter. Make yourself a chocolate peanut butter spinach smoothie. It sounds disgusting. It's a greenish brown color that doesn't look very appetizing, but it tastes so damn good. Just trust me. It's cocoa powder, banana, frozen banana, spinach, and some peanut butter. That's all you need. Put that in your blender, blend it all up. It will taste amazing. Oh, and one more thing. I'm really into what is it? Raisin bread with peanut butter spread. I've been having that for breakfast, lunch, dinner every day for a while. And new thing I found is this Earth Balance peanut butter coconut spread. Y'all, that shit is amazing. It's just so good. Now, it's kind of expensive. I bought it at Giant. Is Giant everywhere, or is Giant just like here in like the Philadelphia-ish area? I'm not sure. But I bought it at Giant, and it's like $6 regularly, but I got it on sale. So while it's good, I wouldn't have paid $6 for it. It's not that good, but it's good for, it's $4 good. Not $6 good or $7, however much it costs. It's sale good. So buy it. I would never steer you wrong. I knows my food. So let's start with the housekeeping. You can follow me on Twitter, or follow the podcast on Twitter at TINerdPod. Follow me on Instagram at The Introverted Nerd, and like the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Introverted Nerd. And you can email me, because along with this podcast, I podcast about Black Lightning every week. This podcast, the Saved by the Bell podcast, comes out every Wednesday on Wayback Wednesday. And the Black Lightning podcast comes out on Fridays, so you can subscribe to the podcast so you can hear both, and you can leave me feedback for Black Lightning, because there's a lot of shit going on in that show that I want to talk about with people. So email me at theintrovertednerd@gmail.com, and we can talk about all that stuff. So let's get to Rent-A-Pop, because I got to get my ass out of here before my neighbor starts screaming about, football, and I'm just going to be so annoyed. It's, so we meet Zack's dad in this episode. Oh my God. Our first meeting of one of Zack's parents. And I have to say, I don't have a bell or anything, but I have to ding a bell, and I have to pat myself on the back, because I am so right about Zack. What I said about Zack in the last episode about how shitty his parents are, and how he has the kind of parents that don't punish him and think that his shit doesn't stink. I was right. I was so right. I was right on top of that. So I took a psychology class in college, and I got an A in that class. So obviously I should be a psychologist, and I should have taught that psychology class because I was right on top of all of this. I know my shit. Um, and so let's start at the beginning. It's time for the class ski trip. That's my first thing. Do people have these kind of class trips like every year? Because these aren't like, I had senior trips in school and we had like little trips in school, like little like day trip kind of things, that museum type shit. But we never had like weekend ski trip kind of shit. That wasn't the life I lived. So is that a thing, or is that just, I don't know, a TV thing? Because I'm never sure about any of this. Like some of this stuff could be like real, but a lot of it could just be bullshit TV stuff that I'm just not understanding. So they're going on the school ski trip, or they want to go on a school ski trip, and they're trying to figure out how to pay for it. Okay. That's the other thing I don't understand. Do the writers of Saved by the Bell just not realize how school trips work? Or do I just not realize it? Because, it's possible that I'm just an idiot that doesn't know this type of shit. Or maybe I just forgot it because I haven't been in high school in such a long time. Oh, depressing. Well, high school wasn't that great, but I'm getting old, y'all. And so the Super Six, as I like to call them now, is, or what I started calling them in my notes, so I didn't have to write on their names. The Super Six are in the Max trying to figure out how to pay for the school trip, and I'm like, when I went, okay, the few times that I went on school trips, on like the big senior trip kind of shit, it was, the school like put like a down payment of their own money, or whatever the situation was, and then they told us how much everything would cost, and we got to pay, and the students signed permission slips and bought in their money type of thing. It wasn't a situation where we as the students had to come up with a way to pay for the school to pay for our school trip. I don't know. I don't. Maybe that's just, is that a white high school kind of thing? Is that what white high schools do? Or is that what California high schools do? I don't know. But we didn't pay for school trips like that. I've never had a situation where I was wondering like, damn, how is the school going to pay for us to go to Washington, D.C. for our senior class trip? They told us how much it costs and we paid for it. But okay, these are the kids that run the school, so maybe maybe they're on like the school board or something like that, and they just run all this shit. So they decide to throw a school carnival. They go to Mr. Belding. Mr. Belding approves the school carnival, but I'm wondering, okay, you're trying to pay for the school trip. Even though I don't understand the economics of all that, I'm going with you. I'm with you on that. But then you want to throw a school carnival on top of that to pay for the school trip. So my first question is, well, how the hell are you going to pay for the carnival? And how does any of this work? Is this some kind of pyramid scheme that I don't understand? Because you have to, the carnival that they actually have in the episode, they have the strongman thing. They have the dunk tank. I'm assuming that these things weren't just sitting around Bayside, like in a closet, the way that the radio station was. But, I could be wrong. Maybe Bayside had like a yearly carnival that they just kept that shit hanging around in a closet somewhere. But, yeah. So how do you have to rent all of you have to rent all this stuff, right? You can't, oh my God, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. And it was driving me nuts while I was watching the episode, because I'm like, this is just me adulting. Just me being an adult is so crazy, because I can't remember ever thinking about how how any of this shit ever worked when I was a kid. It was always like, well, this is what they're doing. It didn't matter. Oh, it was so crazy. And it was so weird that they're spending money. I don't know, spending money to make money. Maybe that's the idea. And the things that they do for this school trip, I don't even like skiing. I don't get it. I always feel like you want to go someplace warm, but maybe when you live in California, well, I'm not even going to complain because I complained about Zack wanting to take a trip to Hawaii and all that. And so they're actually doing what I think they should be doing, and I'm complaining about it. So I'm not going to complain about the ski trip. They live in warm weather. They want to take a ski trip. I get it. No complaints. I'm going to just cross off that complaint. So after they finish talking to Mr. Belding tells Zack that he's failing, and he specifically requests to speak to Zack's dad. Last episode was the fuck you Slater episode. I'm going to switch my fuck yous over to Mr. Belding. Throw up those 2 middle fingers. Fuck him. Because what he says is, when he tells Zack that he's failing and he needs to speak to, it's time for one of his parents to come in. He says that it's time for me to meet your dad, Zack. And Zack's like, well, usually my mom comes in to, do this shit. And Mr. Belding is like, yeah, I know your mom is the one that usually comes in, but she has no idea what kind of student you actually are. So, it's time for the men to talk, basically, is what he said. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here, Mr. Belding. Who do you think you are requesting to speak to his father? Like, no, you don't request to speak to anybody. The parent that comes in is the parent that you fucking talk to. I was so disgusted. Even though he was, see, I was of two minds here because I was like happy that he was validating everything that I thought about Zack's mom. Well, yeah, I did mention his mom last week specifically. But he was validating everything that I said, so I was happy about it. But then, on the other hand, I was like, fuck this guy. What the fuck do you know about Zack's dad? That you need to speak to his dad because you think his dad is going to be tougher? You don't know shit about his dad. Oh, and I'm so surprised that he's never met his dad before. As much trouble as Zack gets into, I'm surprised that his dad hasn't been up there at some point. That if his mom goes up to the school a lot, I'm surprised. And this is what should tell Mr. Belding that his dad is not really involved. If Zack's mom is the one that always comes to the school and you have never met the dad, as much trouble as Zack gets into, you should know that, Mrs. Morris, because we haven't met her yet. I don't even know her first name. Mrs. Morris is on her own with Zack. So stop with the dad bullshit. Oh, and I forgot. Oh my God. The craziness is already starting with these fucking Eagles fans. I hear the cop cars. I don't even know what that's about. I'm blaming Eagles fans like for no reason. I have no idea why the police are have their sirens on. It could be an actual emergency, but when things go bad today, I'm just blaming Eagles fans for everything. No matter what. It's your fault, Eagles fans. I don't like you. So earlier at the Max, we meet the other new character, James, the acting waiter. And this is when I started to wonder, like, is this the end of Max? I started to freak out a little bit because I was like, oh shit, I don't remember the last episode that Max was actually in because I haven't been paying attention to him. Like, just sort of in my head, I knew that at some point Max is just out of the show. And, it just, I'm not ready for it yet. I was planning to like make note of when Max disappeared from the show. But what's his name? James shows up, and he's the new waiter, the actor waiter. And I got some things to say about James because James is an older man. You know, he's a little too old to be an acting waiter, like, right? I mean, I don't know. That seems like what younger people do when they first go to like California and they want to be an actor. You do the waiting thing and you do acting, to try to, support your actor dreams. But James is like he's old enough to be Zack's dad, which he actually plays in this episode at some point. So he's a little too old to be living the acting dream. And he's not even working at a good restaurant. He's working at the fucking Max. Like, that's sad enough. Like, if you're James and you want to be an actor and the only job you can get is at the Max where you have to serve a bunch of 15-year-olds that probably don't even fucking tip. Like, how does James even live? Like, how does he survive? He must live like in a trash pile outside the Max. Just live in the back of the Max. Like, what are you doing with your life, James? You this isn't good. So after Mr. Belding fucks off, Zack goes home and we meet his dad, who is kind of good looking. Not kinda. He's a good looking older guy. He doesn't look like he's related to Zack. He's kind of short. Zack is almost taller than him. I believe Zack is taller than him at this point. But he is good looking, and his name is Derek Morris, and he walks in on his giant cell phone that's identical to Zack's, and he's he's talking to somebody on the phone, and he's making a deal about trying to sell 100 PCs, and he says he's going to give a 20% discount, and then he throws in whatever the person says on the other end. 20% discount is not enough, so he throws in season tickets to the Lakers. Okay. Investigative reporting time. I need somebody to tell me, back in I don't know when this episode, back in the early 90s, like pre-1995, this is like 1993-ish or earlier. So around 1993, how much was 100 computer? How much was one computer? That he's trying to sell 100. He's given a 20% discount, and he's given Lakers tickets. How much were Lakers tickets at that time? How much is anything? Mr. Morris is, I'm calling him Mr. Morris. Derek Morris is he a good businessman? I'm not sure, because Lakers tickets seem expensive. Like, even back then, like, weren't the Lakers good back then? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about basketball. The only thing I know is Magic Johnson. Was he playing then, or had he already retired because of his HIV? I'm not sure, but that's the only thing I know about the Lakers. But the Lakers have always been popular, right? I don't know. That's the game that you always see celebrities at. So I don't know. I assume that Lakers tickets were expensive. A little too expensive to be, like, he's trying to sell the computers. Why is he giving Lakers tickets? Isn't that like, I don't know. And it was Lakers season tickets. So, like, I don't know. I don't think Mr. Morris is very good at his job as a computer salesman. But he was a little too, like, executive-y to be, is that a word? Executive-y? Probably not. I made that up. He's a little too executive-like to be just a computer salesman. I don't know. But so he's talking on the phone, and Zack throws out this hypothetical to his dad about he says his friend is failing in school, and what would his dad do if he was this friend's dad. And Mr. Morris, I keep calling him Mr. Morris. Derek Morris is like, he's not really paying attention. He's not really interested in what Zack has to say. And I guess, when I was first watching it, I was like, well, he's a neglectful father. But I'm like, if my son or my child call me into their room for this hypothetical bullshit, I would be like, I would just brush it off too, because it's silly. So Mr. Morris is like, you know what, Zack? I wouldn't let my kid, if they were failing, school is the most important thing. If my kid was failing, or if I was that kid's father, I wouldn't let them go on a ski trip, and I would ground them for life. And Zack, and then he gets another phone call and he walks out of the room. And Zack actually takes that shit seriously. He's like actually worried. He has a stupid daydream about being an old man still grounded in his room after like 60 years. And I'm like, why would you, if you're Zack and you have like half a brain cell, you will realize that your father is just, saying some bullshit because he doesn't want to talk to you right now. Especially if you're just going to be throwing silly hypotheticals at him. And you would think that, like, you're not going to be punished for the rest. Like, you can't be punished for the rest of your life unless your dad is going to lock you in a goddamn basement. You turn 18 at some point. You can leave the house, Zack. Like, stop it. You, Zack Morris, are a little too smart for that. So Zack sneaks off to the Max, and he actually, after he has that stupid daydream, he gets this look on his face. He's like, oh no. Why did I say it like Keanu Reeves? Oh no. He gets that look on he gets like this look on his face, like he's really worried, and he's so worried that he sneaks out of his window. And I'm wondering, like, what the hell is Zack about to do? But he just goes to the Max with Screech. I was expecting something else to happen. I don't know why I expected something else. I act like I've never seen these episodes before, but I do watch them like I've never seen them before, and I get surprised. And I've I've recently realized that I really wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to Saved by the Bell while I was growing up. Like, I would watch these episodes every day, but I must have been doing 10 other things while it was on, because things happen in this show and I'm like, what the hell? Like, why did I never notice this? So he goes to the Max with Screech, and James shows up, and James wants to know what's wrong with Zack, and James comes to take Zack's order, and what happens is that Zack is like, just bring me a Coke. I'm not really hungry right now, James. And I'm like, this is, sign Max, it's like a billboard in front of you. Quit this fucking job. These kids are not, going to help you pay your rent. Zack's only getting drinks. Like, come on, Max or James. So James wants to know what's wrong with Zack, and Screech, of course, can't keep his fucking mouth shut. So he tells James about Zack can't go on the ski trip, blah blah blah, and James says, just out of nowhere, if I was your father, I would let you go on a ski trip, Zack. And Zack is like, you would? And it's like, is that the first thing you would say? First of all, if I was James, I would be minding my fucking business, because you don't make enough money there to be these kids, sounding board and to give them counsel in life. You like, just get his Coke and get the fuck out of there. Go to one of these kids that look like they have a little bit of money, or look like they want to spend a little bit of money. You need all the money you can get, James. If you're a 40-year-old or 45-year-old actor waiter, you need all the help you can get. So Zack's bright idea is to have James pose as his father to meet Mr. Belding, because Mr. Belding has never met Zack's father before, so this is not stupid. Mr. Belding is too smart to fall for this, right? Of course he isn't, because it's fuck Mr. Belding all day long. He falls for this. He meets James, who is speaking in his like over actor voice. He's like, and okay, I actually genuinely laughed at this scene where Mr. Belding meets James, because James is a bad actor and he can't remember Mr. Belding's name. So he actually has these moments. He's walking around and he picks up Mr. Belding's he picks up a trophy in Mr. Belding's room, and to look at it, and he says, and that's when he like remembers his name. So I actually genuinely laughed at that moment. Don't hate me. It was kind of funny though. You had to, if you just watch it, it was genuinely funny. No, maybe it wasn't that funny, or maybe it was funny. I'm like, I can hear people in my head like calling me like a loser for laughing at this stupid show, but it was funny. James is kind of funny, but he's speaking in this actor voice, and he's speaking so weird, and it's he's speaking in like this stagey actor voice, so it's and I can't understand why Mr. Belding doesn't say, why are you speaking like that? Why are you speaking like you're an actor in a Broadway show, James? So Mr. Belding, for some reason, likes James, and James actually gets Zack. He plays it so that in the end, Mr. Belding is feeling bad for how mean James is being to Zack, and so Zack gets what he wants, and he can go on the ski trip. He doesn't have to. And Mr. Belding only wanted to, I don't understand why this is such a big deal to Zack, because the only thing Mr. Belding wanted to recommend was 2 weeks of after school help so that he could bring up his grades. It wasn't that serious. He could have brought his actual dad to school. And the only thing, but Zack was all, when Mr. Belding said that he wanted Zack to get 2 weeks of after school help, Zack got all like, he was appalled. Like, how could you recommend after school help for me for somebody who's getting, what is he getting? 2 Fs, a D, and a C or something like that? Like, asshole, you're about to fail. Just take the 2 weeks of after school help and go on your goddamn ski trip and move on with your life. But no, like I said before, Zack always has to be lying. His first instinct is to lie. And so that's what he does. He continues to lie. He builds on his lie, because Mr. Belding, during the carnival setup, who knows how they got all this stuff there, but the carnival is being set up, and Mr. Belding, he comes into the he comes in to talk to Zack or something like that, or to just check on the carnival setup, how it's going, and he tells Zack that he sent a letter to his dad because he wants Derek Morris to chaperone the ski trip. So that forces Zack into another lie where he has James, where Derek actually has to come to the school. He has to bring his dad to the school, and he has James pose as Mr. Belding. And Derek Morris, I'm also not that smart, because he gets fooled by James, who is speaking in a different accent, but just as stagey and Broadway, over the toppy. And he actually grabs his he grabs his tie, and he knocks heads with Zack's dad. And oh my God, Derek Morris is such a terrible, like, neglectful father that during this meeting that he's having with his son's principal, not teacher, you're always at the top of the food chain, the fucking principal of the school. And what he's worried about is he sees Mr. Belding's computer and he's like, hey, what kind of lease do you guys have on that? It's like, oh my God, at your son's school, at a school meeting with your son's principal, you're trying to sell computers? Dude, get your life together. Get it all the way together. You do not need to be selling computers. And of course, James doesn't know shit about the computer, so he's making shit up as he goes along. And while I was wondering, like, how the hell is Zack setting up meetings in Mr. Belding's office without Mr. Belding there, without being afraid that Mr. Belding was going to come, but he has Screech, cut Mr. Belding off when he's about to go in his office. And Screech has this whole scheme where he's like, he takes Mr. Belding away and he's like, the nerds have been poisoned. The chess club has been poisoned. And you go into they get into the bathroom and they have the chess club in there, and two nerds are in one stall with a chessboard on the toilet. Like, what? And Mr. Belding actually opens the stall door, sees that, and doesn't say, like, isn't it crazy that two people are in this, two of the chess members are in the stall with a chessboard on the toilet? And nothing weird about that. That Mr. Belding, not suspicious about that at all. But he sees Screech's walkie-talkie, and then he's all of a sudden he's like, oh, I understand what you're doing now. This is all a scheme of Zack's. It's like, you weren't fooled by the nerds in the stall with a chessboard on the toilet. Mr. Belding, not a good principal, not a bright guy. Fuck him. So he rushes to his office, and Zack has already got his dad out, and James is there, and Mr. Belding and James talk again, and everything is fine for the foreseeable future, or until the next scene where we're actually at the carnival, and they have Mr. Belding in the dunk tank, and Zack's dad shows up because, for reasons, he doesn't really care about Zack, right? He's not really interested in Zack's life, but he shows up at this carnival. Oh, he's not interested in Zack. What he shows up for is he wants to close the deal with Mr. Belding about the computers. So, applause for the writers for remembering that Derek Morris is not a good father. He was not interested in in seeing what Zack was doing with his his after school spare time at this carnival. He actually just wanted to sell more computers to Mr. Belding. So Slater, not purposely this time, he's not trying to fuck Zack over. He gets Derek Morris to try to throw at the dunk tank to, I don't know, I've never done that before. I've never even been to a carnival where the dunk tank was a thing, but he gets Derek to throw at Mr. Belding, and he hits the bullseye. Mr. Belding falls in, and then he walks over to talk to him. And Mr. Morris, Zack's dad is like, who was this dickhead that was who he's calling Mr. Belding the dickhead. Well, he didn't call him a dickhead. I called him a dickhead, but that would have been great if Mr. Morris would have been like, Zack, who's this dickhead in the dunk tank? That would have been great. That would have made my day. It's the little things that make me happy. So Mr. Belding, Derek Morris start talking, and when they start getting closer to like who are you, they start asking each other who they are, and they eventually after a few seconds, figure out, Zack was on some bullshit. Zack lied about everything, and Zack's in trouble. So we get to, this is the last scene of the show. Zack's in his room waiting for his dad to come back, and Mr. Morris comes back, says, Zack, ski trips off. And Zack is, he acts like he's surprised. Like, asshole, you lied. You set up this elaborate scheme where you had your principal fooled about somebody else being your father. You had your father fooled about somebody else being your principal. Zack really expected to not get in trouble. And I don't understand his mindset ever. Never, ever do I understand Zack's, what Zack is thinking and why he thinks it. So they talk, and his dad is like, Zack, why didn't you tell the truth? That should have been, the first sign that dude doesn't know his son, because it's like, when has Zack ever told the truth? Ever. We never see Zack tell the truth. In every episode, I think we've seen Zack tell a lie. So I don't know why this guy is surprised that his son is a lying liar who lies about everything. But he is, and they talk, and Derek Morris keeps getting phone calls on his giant cell phone, and Zack is getting frustrated, and he actually makes the comment about, do you actually care about your family? And Zack is like, white guy, white teenage boy, angry, and he and his dad start talking about how he can never talk to him, how he's always getting phone calls, and they reminisce about, Zack being, when was the last time they spoke to each other? And it was like, Derek Morris says it was in Little League. So Zack's 15 or 16 years old now. Little League is what, 9 or 10? I don't know how old you are in Little League, but if the last time you spoke to your son, really had a serious conversation with your son, is when he scraped his knee in Little League, you got a ton of problems. And Zack is going to be such a problem forever and ever. Oh, he's terrible. So he keeps getting phone calls. He keeps getting interrupted. And he gets interrupted to the point where he's actually having a prolonged conversation with, Charlie, who he keeps getting phone calls from Charlie. So whoever this Charlie guy is, his assistant, his co-worker, whoever he is, he gets a lot of phone calls from Charlie, and he actually just sits down to start having a conversation with Charlie. He hangs up he gets off the phone with Charlie, and Zack actually makes a phone call to him. And it's so funny because he says Zack calls him and he answered the phone, and Zack is in the room with him, a foot away from him. He's sitting on the bed. Zack is, just, they're within touching distance of each other. Zack could reach over and touch him. And Zack is like, is this the only way I can talk to you? And Derek Morris is like, Zack? He's surprised. I'm like, you're in the room with him. You can hear him. You can hear him while he's on the phone with you. Why are you? Stop it. Stop. Just stop it. It was ridiculous. It was so crazy. And, he actually catches himself. He decides, and Zack is the luckiest motherfucker in the world because he can't go on the ski trip, but his dad feels bad after all of this, even though Zack is the shithead that did all of it. So his punishment, quote unquote, is to go on a fishing trip with his father during the weekend of the ski trip. So Zack, once again, found a way to twist this all around to make his lying mistakes other people's fault. and he gets rewarded. The life of Zack Morris. Getting rewarded, getting forgiven for being the biggest dickhead around is, I guess that's a good life if you can live it. And meanwhile, everybody else was just around in this episode. That's the end of the episode. But, Lisa, Slater, Jesse, they were all at the carnival, like scamming kids out of money. And one of the questions I had was like, they're trying to scam kids out of money. Like Zack does this, he does that, find the ball under the cup thing. And that's his like carnival game that I don't think is an actual carnival game, but we'll accept it here. But he's trying to trick. That game is like to trick people into spending money, to giving you money, and you're fooling them because they'll never they'll never find the ball that's under the cup, right? That's the whole point. I'm like, how is that a carnival game? And aren't all of these kids going on the ski trip too? Like, why are you trying to trick the other students that are going on the trip with you? Why are you trying to trick them out of their money? I don't understand Bayside. I really don't understand it, but I love it. I love every minute of this show. Well, not every minute, because I don't like Screech that much. And he's like, even this episode was a little too much for Screech for me because I hate him. But that's it. Zack goes unpunished once again and gets rewarded. That's fantastic. So, until next week, you can subscribe to the podcast. Like I said, leave a 5-star review. And I'll read it on the podcast. I'll read it on here next week or, whenever I get it. And you can follow me on Twitter at TINerdPod. You can follow me personally on Twitter at the Ms. Introvert because I live tweet there. And The Walking Dead is on its way back, and that should be fun because that's going to be such a shit show. Live tweet Black Lightning and The Flash every week. That's always a good time. And what else do I live tweet? Oh, I was live tweeting A Series of Unfortunate Events. That's on Netflix. That's really good. So hop on over to the Ms. Introvert on Twitter and, tweet at me. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at The Introverted Nerd and like the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Introverted Nerd. This episode will be out on Wednesday. So, and I'm not recording it again until I record again on Wednesday because that's when I record my Black Lightning podcast. So if you want to get me some feedback for Black Lightning, you can email me at theintrovertednerd@gmail.com. And that is all. So later, Gators.